Since we've been talking about Earth's rotation, I thought we should read this book called Somewhere in the World Right Now. And it's by Stacy Schuett. And it's a really great book to kind of think about all of the things that are happening in our world as a result of Earth's rotation. So the things that are happening in our world right now. So let's go ahead and check this out. I'm going to show you this map first. Do you know what this map is? Have you ever seen that before? If you haven't, that's okay. We're going to go ahead and talk about it as we read Somewhere in the World Right Now. And it's got a note to the reader. So it says, a note to the reader, the Earth is constantly turning on its axis. One full rotation takes 24 hours, and during that time, the position of the sun in the sky changes, creating light and dark, day and night. It used to be that many places measured time from when the sun was highest overhead at noon. But this meant that neighboring cities would have different clock times at the same instant. Faster travel and better communications made this inconvenient. So in 1884, an international agreement was reached to adopt a system of standard time zones. The planet was divided into 24 equal areas called time zones. However, as the maps on the end papers show, the time zones were adjusted to conform to geographical and political boundaries. So we have changed them a little bit. They're not exact. Everywhere within each zone, it is always the same time. When moving from one time zone to the next, there is a change in 1 hour forward or backward, depending on whether one is moving east or west. Have you ever been in a different time zone before? An important feature of the time zone system is the international dateline. As the sun crosses the 24 time zones, somewhere a change in date must occur. The international community needed to agree on a boundary where the new date would begin. It's clear to have the date change in the middle of It's clear that to have the date change in the middle of a crowded country would cause much confusion. So the line was drawn through the Pacific Ocean, with a few jogs around inhabited regions. Since the Earth turns eastward, places west of the dateline move into the new date first. So no matter where in the world you are, there's somewhere else where it's a different day. That's kind of interesting. So what they were talking about is this is a time zone map. And so if you've ever been to a different time zone, sometimes maybe you're travel and maybe you're an hour behind, or maybe you've traveled somewhere and been many hours behind. But this is because our Earth, as it's rotating, everybody has sunlight at different times because remember, the Earth does not have day all at once. So whatever side of the Earth is facing the sun is the side that is getting day. And if you're facing away, you're getting night. So we're going to kind of keep that in mind as we're reading this story. So somewhere in the world right now. All right. All right. Somewhere in the world right now, it's deepest night. Fog hugs the shoulders of buildings and bridges. A baker slides long loaves of bread into an oven. Somewhere, somebody watches a movie and a mouse hunts for crumbs. I know sometimes when I'm really sleepy and it's daytime, I'm like, oh, I wish I was on the other side of Earth where they had night if I wanted to, go to bed or something like that. But yeah, that's interesting to think. Like right now, it's nighttime somewhere else. Somewhere else in velvety darkness, elephants sleep standing up, swaying gently from side to side. Oh yeah, so the elephants are sleeping somewhere right now. It's interesting. Whales breach and dive in the sea, singing their low, sweet songs. Penguins press close to their chicks to keep them warm. Somewhere the night wind sighs and murmurs. The moon shines through a window. A little girl lies dreaming of tomorrow. So maybe that's not happening here, but this is probably happening somewhere else in the world. I don't know if you've noticed too, but behind the pictures, these are like little maps. So I can see it says Antarctica. This one has Madagascar. I think the other page I saw Uganda in Africa. Right here I see London. So it's talking about places that are, you know, all over the earth. All right. So we're going to go ahead and look here. This looks like it's in Asia. I see like Kuala Lumpur, Punjab. All right. In the Indian Ocean. I like how they have that in the background, kind of to change the picture a little bit. It's a little bit different than where the image is, but I like how they're including maps. All right. But somewhere else right now, tomorrow is already here. Dawn is breaking, a rooster crows, and people are waking up. Ooh, so that's weird to think that like somewhere right now it's nighttime, and then also somewhere else it's like just beginning to be morning. People are waking up, starting their day. Okay. Somewhere it's morning. Families eat breakfast, kids get dressed for school, farmers leave for the fields to tend their crops. Birds stretch their wings and sing. A boy hides a note for a friend to find. People go to work, stores open. Another day has begun. And somewhere right now, people buy food for their midday meal. A carpenter measures wood. A dog runs off with his lunch. And in the late morning shade, a baby kangaroo naps. A koala munches eucalyptus leaves. Mm-hmm. So right now we've kind of touched upon like right now, somewhere in the world, it is nighttime. Somebody's going to sleep. We've talked about somewhere in the world, it's beginning morning. And now we're looking at somewhere in the world, it's like noon or afternoon. People are at lunchtime, midday. And this one's late morning. Somewhere in the world right now, fishing boats return with their catch. Seagulls swoop and dive and bicker over scraps. Somewhere the afternoon sun gilds workers in the vineyards. Cows graze and rest in the grass. A girl tends her horses. So now we're looking at afternoon somewhere else. So there's every time of day is happening somewhere in the world right now. Interesting thought. Somewhere in the world right now, the sun is setting. Monkeys screech from the trees as a jaguar glides through the jungle. Parrots mutter and chuckle. Shadows grow long. And somewhere else, the sun has already slipped away, drawing evening down like a shade. In the city, signs flash on and off and on. Trains whoosh through tunnels, taking people home. Wow, there's so much going on right now. So crazy that all of these things are happening when it might be daytime here, but all these other times are happening elsewhere. I love this. I love it. All right, somewhere else, suddenly houses light up. A girl and her brother race each other to the door. The day's work is done. A family sits down to supper. So somewhere, somebody's ending their day. It's evening. They're going to have dinner. And somewhere else, night has fallen. Clouds cushion the moon as it climbs across the sky. An alligator sleeps in an inky swamp beneath a tapestry of stars. The last notes of a song fade into the rhythm of the waves. Somewhere, a truck driver follows her headlights down a lonely road. A night watchman starts his shift. Wow, there's so many things that can happen during the day that we don't even think about that, yeah, all of these things could be happening at the same time, just somewhere else. I always hear people make that joke. It's 5 o'clock somewhere, they're talking about not being at work, and being done and just being able to relax a little bit. That kind of joke is true because we have all these time zones. I also know, like at New Year's, it's really cool in the morning, like when on New Year's Eve, like when I've watched the news, they'll have New Year's from around the world. So places that have already celebrated the New Year, they'll have people celebrating and fireworks going off. My best friend lives in another state, so her New Year and my New Year are different because we are 2 hours ahead of her with her time zone. So, our time zones, our Earth turning on its axis, that rotation, all of those tie in together because of when we're facing the sun and when we're facing away from the sun. All right, so we're continuing with Somewhere in the World right now. Friends say goodnight. Somewhere, somebody reads a story and someone listens. That's a nighttime story. When am I reading this to you? I guess it depends when you're watching it, right? Voices whisper sweet dreams, and under a blanket of night, lights go out one by one, somewhere in the world. Right now. And then here is at the very end, there are the time zones. So we're going to look a little bit more at time zones. You don't need to be able to figure out the times or anything like that when we're looking at time zones, but I do want you to know that they exist and why they exist. So we're going to use some of my travels to understand time zones a little bit more so you can understand why we have them, and we're going to look at more of our Earth rotation. So I hope you enjoyed this story, and I hope that it helps you think a little bit more about what's happening in our Earth right now. Somewhere in the World Right Now taught us about time zones. Time zones give specific areas on Earth a time of day that is earlier or later than the neighboring time zones. This is because when it is daytime on one side of the Earth, it is nighttime on the other side. There are 24 time zones dividing the Earth into different times, each with its own name. This map shows Earth's 24 time zones. We're going to go ahead and look at the time zones of the United States to get an idea of how time zones work. In looking at this map, we can see that the contiguous or connected United States is broken up into 4 time zones, and then we can add our 2 additional time zones with Alaska and Hawaii. Find our state, Ohio. It's located in the Eastern time zone. One way I've learned how to understand time zones is by living and traveling. I'm going to take you on a few of the adventures I've been on so we can understand time zones. All right, so let's go on our first trip. We're going to go to New York. Awesome, New York City. There's Mr. Allforce and I in Times Square. So when we traveled to New York City, we actually stayed in the Eastern time zone, and it's the same one as Ohio. So we didn't change any time because New York and Ohio are both in the same time zone. All right, it's time for our next adventure. We're going to go to Orlando. Awesome, Disney. There I am front row with my friend Maya on Everest at Animal Kingdom. When I traveled to Orlando, Florida, I didn't have to change my time because Florida gets sun or daytime at the same time as Ohio because we are in the same time zone, so our times do not change. Not all of Florida is actually in our time zone. If you look at the panhandle part of Florida or the very western part, it's actually an hour behind us because they are in the central time zone. All right, let's see where we are headed to next. Okay, we are going to Chicago, Illinois. Here I am at the Shedd Aquarium in Chicago, Illinois, and I was at their water show and I got pulled out of the crowd to try to win an opportunity to meet one of their seals, and I actually lost in a penguin waddling contest. True story. Anyway, Chicago is very close to Ohio, but it's interesting. They are in the central time zone. So if you look at that map there, Chicago's actually 1 hour behind Ohio. So if it's 5 p.m. in Ohio, that means it's 4 p.m. in Chicago. So if you were to travel there and maybe sign up to go to a water show like I did at the Shed Aquarium, you'd have to make sure that you had the right time because Chicago is an hour behind us. All right, let's go ahead and see where we're going to next. Ooh, Yellowstone National Park. All right, wow. I was there in 2003, so this picture is kind of old. I'm at Old Faithful, and Yellowstone is actually in 3 states. It's in mostly Wyoming, but it's also in Idaho and Montana. And those states are all in the Mountain Time Zone, and Mountain Time Zone is 2 hours behind Ohio's Eastern Time Zone. So if it were to be 3 p.m. in Ohio, that means it would be 1 p.m. in the Mountain Time Zone. This part of the country actually has different daylight hours than we do. It's all because of Earth's rotation. All of our time zone examples so far have been in the United States. But remember, there are 24 time zones in the entire world. So if you travel to another place in the world, you'll most likely get to go to a different time zone. Let's go and see where in the world Mrs. Allforce is going. All right, where are we going? Ooh, Paris, France. All right, so I traveled to Paris a long time ago. It was actually in the 1900s. It was that long ago. So that is a picture of me in front of the Eiffel Tower. I was also in another time zone. We can use this world time zone map to determine the difference of time from Ohio to Paris, France. Let's look at a closer version of the map. We are in the Eastern time zone, that little blue area in the United States, and Paris is in that yellowish area. It's actually in the green. And if I count each of those like little sections to the right from the United States where we are in that Eastern Standard Time Zone to where Paris, France is, I can see that they are 6 hours ahead of us. So there's a 6-hour time difference. Since it's not the 1900s anymore, there are a lot of websites that you can use to just find what time it is for any place in the world. Goodness, that technology exists because I'm going the farthest place I've ever gone from home. We're going to go to Sydney, Australia. All right, there I am in Sydney, Australia. Do you recognize that building? It is the famous Sydney Opera House. I actually traveled to Sydney with a group of about 40 students. We were in a program that traveled abroad. So we went to Sydney, Australia, and it is very far away. So we can use that world time zone map to help us determine the time, or we could use a website and type in what time is it in Sydney, Australia. I use timeanddate.com. There's lots of different websites that you can use to find out what time it is somewhere else in the world. As I'm making this video right now, I'm in Ohio. It's Wednesday, January 6, 2021 at 3:52 p.m. What time is it in Sydney, Australia? All right now in Sydney, Australia, it's 7:52 a.m. So it's in the morning, and it's Thursday, January 7th, 2021. So in Australia, they're already in the next day. Sydney, Australia is actually 16 hours ahead of Ohio. So remember, we have 24 time zones in our world because of Earth's rotation that takes 24 hours. Everybody has day and night at different times on Earth, depending on when you face the sun or face away from the sun. Where in the world do you wonder what time it is? I hope you enjoyed reading Somewhere in the World Right Now and learning about why we have time zones on Earth. That's all for me. Take care. Peace.